On July 5th, 1852, Frederick Douglass was invited to Rochester, New York to speak to the citizens. Whatever their expectations were, he had a different perspective, a different tone, a different observation to make about the state of the country and the fight for independence that had been going on and the independence sought and gained over the last 76 years. This was his speech. Mr. President, friends, and fellow citizens, he who could address this audience without quailing sensation has stronger nerves than I. I do not remember ever to have appeared as a speaker before any assembly more shrinkingly nor with greater distrust of my ability than I do this day. A feeling has crept over me, quite unfavorable to the exercise of my limited powers of speech. The task before me is one which requires much previous thought and study for its proper performance. I know that apologies of this sort are generally considered flat and unmeaning. I trust, however, that mine will not be so considered. Should I seem at ease, my appearance would much misrepresent me. The little experience I have had in addressing the public meetings in country schoolhouses avails me nothing on the present occasion. The papers and placards say that I am to deliver a 4th of July oration. This certainly sounds large and out of the common way, for it is true that I have often had the privilege to speak in this beautiful hall and to address many who now honor me with their presence. But neither their familiar faces nor the perfect gauge I think I had of Corinthian Hall seems to free me from embarrassment. The fact is, ladies and gentlemen, the distance between this platform and the slave plantation from which I escaped is considerable, and the difficulties to be overcome in getting from the latter to the former are by no means light. That I am here today is to me a matter of astonishment as well as of gratitude. You will not, therefore, be surprised if in what I had to say I evinced no elaborate preparation, nor graced my speech with any high-sounding exordium. With little experience and with less learning, I have been able to throw my thoughts hastily and imperfectly together, and trusting to your patient and generous indulgence, I will proceed to lay them before you. This, for the purpose of the celebration, is the 4th of July. It is the birthday of your national independence and of your political freedom. This, to you, is what the Passover was to emancipated people of God. It carries your minds back to the day, and to the act of your great deliverance, and to the signs and to the wonders associated with that act and that day. This celebration also marks the beginning of another year of your national life, and reminds you that the Republic of America is now 76 years old. I am glad, fellow citizens, that your nation is so young. 76 years, though an good old age for a man, is but a mere speck in the life of a nation. 80 years and 10 is the allotted time for individual men, but nations number their years by thousands. According to this fact, you are even now only in the beginning of your national career, still lingering in the period of childhood. I repeat, I am glad this is so. This is hope in the thought, and hope is much needed. Under the dark clouds which lower above the horizon, the eye of the reformer is met with angry flashes portending disastrous times, but his heart may well beat lighter at the thought that America is young, that she is still in the impressible stage of her existence. May he not hope that high lessons of wisdom, of justice, and of truth will yet give direction to her destiny? Were the nation older, the patriot's heart might be sadder, and the reformer's brow heavier. Its future might be shrouded in gloom, and the hope of its prophets go out in sorrow. There is consolation in the thought that America is young. Great streams are not easily turned from channels worn deep in the course of ages. They may sometimes rise in quiet and stately majesty and inundate the land, refreshing and fertilizing the earth with their mysterious properties. They may also rise in wrath and fury and bear away on their angry waves the accumulated wealth of years of toil and hardship. They, however, gradually flow back to the same old channel and flow on as serenely as ever. But while the river may not be turned aside, it may dry up and leave nothing behind but the withered branch and the unsightly rock, to howl in the abyss sweeping wind the sad tale of departed glory. As with rivers, so with nations. Fellow citizens, I shall not presume to dwell at length on the associations that cluster about this day. The simple story of it is that 76 years ago, the people of this country were British subjects. The style and title of your sovereign people, in which you now glory, was not then born. You were under the British crown. Your fathers esteemed the English government as the home government, and England as their fatherland. This home government, you know, although a considerable distance from your home, did in the exercise of its parental prerogatives impose upon colonial children such restraints, burdens, and limitations as in mature judgment it deemed wise, right, and proper. But your fathers, who had not been adopted, the fashionable idea of this day of the infallibility of government and the absolute character of its acts presumed to differ from the home government in respect to the wisdom and the justice of some of these burdens and restraints. They went so far in their excitement as to pronounce the measures of government unjust, unreasonable, and oppressive, and altogether such as ought not be quietly submitted to. I scarcely need say, fellow citizens, that my opinion of these measures fully accords with that of your fathers. Such a declaration of agreement on my part would not be worth much to anybody. It would certainly prove nothing as to what part I might have taken had I lived during the great courtesy of 1776. To say now that America was right and England was wrong is exceedingly easy. Everybody can say it. The dastard, not less than noble brave, can flippantly descant on the tyranny of England towards the American colonies. It is fashionable to do so. But there was a time when to pronounce against England and in favor of the cause of the colonies tried men's souls. They who did not so were accounted in their day plotters of mischief, agitators, and rebels, dangerous men, to side with the right against the wrong, with the weak against the strong, and with the oppressed against the oppressor. Here lies the merit, and one which of all others seems unfashionable in our day. The cause of liberty may be stabbed by the men who glory in the deeds of your fathers, but to proceed, feeling themselves harshly and unjustly treated by their home government. Your fathers, like men of honesty and men of spirit, earnestly sought redress. They petitioned and remonstrated. They did so in decorous, respectful, and loyal manner. Their conduct was wholly unexceptional. This, however, did not answer the purpose. They saw themselves treated with sovereign indifference, coldness, and scorn, yet they persevered. They were not the men to look back. As the sheet anchor takes a firmer hold when the ship is tossed by the storm, so did the cause of your fathers grow stronger. As it breasted the chilling blast of keenly displeasure, the greatest and the best of British statesmen admitted its justice and loftiest eloquence of the British Senate came to its support, but with that blindness which seems to be unvaryingly characteristic of tyrants. Since Pharaoh and his hosts were drowned in the Red Sea, the British government persisted in the exactions complained of. The madness of this course, we believe, is admitted now even by the England, but we fear the lesson is wholly lost on our present ruler. Oppression makes a wise man mad. Your fathers were wise men, and they did not go mad. They became restive under this treatment. They felt themselves the victims of grievous wrongs, wholly incurable in their colonial capacity. The brave men, there is always a remedy for oppression. Just here, the idea of a total separation of colonies from the crown was born. It was a startling idea, much more so than we, at this distance of time, regarded the timid and the prudent as has been intimidated of that day were of course shocked and alarmed by it. Such people lived then and had lived before and will probably will ever have a place on this planet. This course in respect to any great change, no matter how great the good to be attained or the wrong to be redressed by it, may be calculated with as much precision as can be the course of the stars. They hate all changes, but silver, gold, and copper change. Of this sort of thing, they always strongly in favor. These people were called Tories in the days of the fathers. The appellation probably conveyed the same idea that is meant by more modern, though a somewhat less euphonious term, which we often find in our papers applied to some of our old politicians. Their opposition to the then dangerous thought was earnest and powerful, but amid all their terror and affrighted vociferations against it, the alarming and revolutionary idea moved on the country with it. On the 2nd of July, 1776, the Continental Congress, to the dismay of the lovers of ease and the worshippers of property, clothed that dreadful idea with all the authority of national sanction. They did so in the form of a resolution, and as we seldom hit upon resolutions draw up in our day where transparency is all equal to this, it may refresh your minds and help my story if I read it. We solemnly publish and declare that these United Colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, and that they are absolved from all allegiances to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is sought to be totally dissolved. Citizens, your fathers made good that resolution. They succeeded, and today you reap the fruits of their success. The freedom gained is yours, and you therefore may properly celebrate this anniversary. The 4th of July is the first great fact in your nation's history, the very ring both in the chain of your yet undeveloped destiny. Pride and patriotism, no less than gratitude, prompt you to celebrate and to hold it in perpetual remembrance. I have said that the Declaration of Independence is the ring bolt to the chain of your nation's destiny, and so indeed I regard it. These principles contained in that instrument are saving principles. Stand by those principles. Be true to them on all occasions, in all places, against all foes, and at whatever cost. From the round top of your ship of state in dark and threatening clouds may be seen heavy billows, like mountains in distance. Disclosed to the leeward huge forms of flitting rocks, that boat drawn, that chain broken, and all is lost. Cling to this day, cling to it and to its principles, with the grasp of a storm-tossed mariner to a spar at midnight. The coming into being of a nation in any circumstance is an interesting event, but besides general considerations, these were peculiar circumstances which make the advent of this republic an event of special attractiveness. The whole scene, as I look back to it, is simple, dignified, and sublime. The population of the country at the time stood at an insignificant number of 3 millions. The country was poor in munitions of war. The population was weak and scattered in a country, a wilderness unsubdued. There were no means of concert and combination, such as exists now. Neither steam nor lightning had then been reduced to order and discipline. From the Potomac to the Delaware was a journey of many days. Under these and innumerable other disadvantages, your fathers declared for liberty and independence and triumph. Fellow citizens, I am not wanting in respect for the fathers of this republic. The signers of the Declaration of Independence were brave men. They were great men too, great enough to give fame to a great age. It does not often happen to a nation to rise at one time such a number of truly great men. The point from which I am compelled to view them is not certainly the most favorable, and yet I cannot contemplate their great deeds with less than admiration. They were statesmen, patriots, and heroes, and for the good they did and the principles they contended for, I will unite with you to honor their memory. They love the country better than their own private interests, and though this is not the highest form of human excellence, all will concede that it is a rare virtue, that when it is exhibited, it ought to command respect. He who will intelligently lay down his life for his country is a man whom it is not in human nature to despise. Your fathers staked their lives and their fortunes and their sacred honor on the cause of their country, and in their admiration of liberty, they lost sight of all other interests. They were peacemen, but they were preferred revolution to peaceful submission to bondage. They were quiet men, but they did not shrink from agitating against oppression. They showed forbearance, but they knew its limits. They believed in order, but not in the order of tyranny. With them, nothing was settled that was not right. With them, justice, liberty, humanity were final, not slavery and oppression. You may well cherish the memory of such great men. They were great in their day and generation. Their solid manhood stands out the more as we contrast it with degenerate times. How circumspect, exact, and proportionate were all their movements. How unlike the politicians of an hour. Their statesmanship looked beyond the passing moment and stretched out into strength into the distant future. They seized upon eternal principles and set a glorious example in their defense. Mark them. Fully appreciating the hardship to be encountered, firmly believing in the right of their cause, honorably inviting scrutiny of an onlooking world, reverently appealing to heaven to attest their sincerity, soundly comprehending the solemn responsibility they were about to assume, wisely measuring terrible odds against them. Your fathers, the fathers of this republic, did most deliberately under the inspiration of a glorious patriotism with a sublime faith in the great principles of justice and freedom, laid deep the cornerstone of the national superstructure, which has risen and still rises a grandeur around you of this fundamental work. This day is the anniversary. Our eyes are met. The demonstration of joyous enthusiasm, banners and pennants wave exultantly on the breeze. The din of business too is hushed. Even Mammon seems to have quitted his grasp on this day, and the ear-piercing fife, the stirring drum, unite their accents with the ascending peal of 1,000 church bells. Prayers are made, hymns are sung, sermons are preached in honor of this day, while the quick martial tramp of a great and multitudinous nation echo back all the hills, valleys, and mountains of a vast continent, bespeak the occasion on thrilling and universal interest. Nations, jubilee, friends, and citizens. I did not enter further into the cause which led to this anniversary. I need not. Many of you understand that better than I do. You could instruct me in regards to that, though. That is a branch of knowledge in which you feel perhaps a much deeper interest in your speaker. The causes which led to the separation of the colonies from the British crown have never lacked for a tongue. They have all been taught in your common schools, narrated at your fireside, unfolded from your pulpits, thundered from your legislative halls, and that are as familiar to you as household words. They form the staple of your national poetry and eloquence. I remember also that as a people, Americans are remarkably familiar with all the facts which make in their own favor. This is esteemed by some as a national trait, perhaps a national weakness. It is a fact that whatever makes for the wealth and for the reputation of Americans can be had cheap will be found by Americans. I shall not be charged with slandering Americans if I say I think the American side of any question may be safely left in American hands. I leave, therefore, the great deeds of your fathers to other gentlemen whose claims have been regularly descended will be less likely to be disputed than mine. My business, if I have any here today, is with the present. The accepted time with God and his cause is the ever living now. Trust no future, however pleasant. Let the dead past bury its dead. Act in the living present. Heart within and God overheard. You have to do with the past only as we can make it useful to the present and to the future. To all inspiring motives, to noble deeds, which can be gained from the past, we are welcome. But now is the time, the important time. Your fathers have lived, died, have done their work, have done much of it well. You live and must die. You must do your work. You have no right to enjoy a child's chair, the labor of your fathers. Unless you children are to be blessed by your labors, you have no right to wear out and waste the hard-earned fame of your fathers to cover your indolent. Sidney Smith tells us that men seldom eulogize the wisdom and virtues of their father, but to excuse some folly or wickedness of their own. This truth is not doubtful one. There are illustrations of it near and remote, ancient and modern. It was fashionable hundreds of years ago for the children of Jacob to boast, we have Abraham to be our father, when they have long lost Abraham's faith and spirit. That people contented themselves under the shadow of Abraham's great name, while they repudiate the deeds which make his name great. Need I remind you that of similar things being done all over this country today? Need I tell you that the Jews are not the only people who built the tombs of the prophets and garnished the speculars of their righteousness? Washington could not die till he had broken the chains of his slaves. Yet his monuments built up by the price of human blood. And the traitors in the bodies and souls of men shout, we have Washington to our father. Alas, that it should be so, yet so it is. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred with their bones. Fellow citizens, pardon me, allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I or those I represent to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? And am I, therefore, called upon to bring our humble offering to the national altar and to confess the benefits and express the devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from your independence to us? Would to God, both for your sakes and ours, that an affirmative answer could be truthfully returned to these questions. Then would my task be light, my burden easy and delightful. For who is there so cold that a nation's sympathy could not warm him? Who so obdurate and dead to the claims of gratitude, and that would not thankfully acknowledge such priceless benefits? Who so stolid and selfish that would not give his voice to swell the hallelujahs of a nation's jubilee, when the chains of servitude have been torn from his limbs? I am not that man, and in a case like that, that dumb might eloquently speak, and the lame man leap as an hart. But such is not the state of the case. I say with a sad sense of disparity between us. I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you in this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, independence, bequeathed by your fathers, is shared by you, not by me. The sunlight that brought life and healing to you has brought strips and death to me. This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn, to drag a man in fetters into the grand illuminated temple of liberty and call upon him to join in you in joyous anthems where inhuman mockery and sacrilegious irony. Do you mean, citizens, to mock me by asking me to speak today? If so, there is a parallel to your conduct. And let me warn you, that is dangerous to copy the example of a nation whose crimes, lowering it up to heaven, were thrown down by the breath of the Almighty, burying the nation in irrecoverable ruin. I can today take up the plaintive laments, appealed and woe-smitten people by the rivers of Babylon. There we sat down. Yea, we wept we wept when we remembered Zion. We hanged our harps upon the willows in the midst thereof, and for there they that carried us away captive required of us a song, and they who wasted required of us mirth, saying, sing us one of the songs of Zion. How can we sing the Lord's song? Land. If I forgot thee, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget her cunning. If I do not remember thee, let my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. Fellow citizens, above your national tumultuous joy, I hear the mournful wail of millions, whose chains, heavy and grievous yesterday, are today rendered more intolerable by the jubilee shouts that reach them. If I do forget, if I do not faithfully remember those bleeding children of sorrow this day, may my right of hand forget her cunning, and may my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth to forget them, to pass lightly over the wrongs, and to chime in with the popular theme would be of treason, most scandalous and shocking, and would make me a reproach before God and the world. My subject of fellow citizens is American slavery. I shall see this day in its popular characteristics from the slave's point of view. I shall see this day in its popular characteristics from the slave's point of view. Standing there, identified with the American bondman making his wrong mind, I do not hesitate to declare with all my soul that the character and conduct of this nation never looked blacker to me than on the 4th of July. Whether we turn to the declaration of the past or the profession of the present, the conduct of the nation seems equally hideous and revolting. America is false to the past, false to the present, and solemnly binds herself to the false of the future. Standing with God in the crushed, bleeding slave on this occasion, I will, in the name of humanity, which is outraged, in the name of liberty, which is feathered in the name of the Constitution and the Bible, which are disregarded and trampled upon, dare to call in question and to denounce with all emphasis I can command everything that serves to perpetuate slavery, the great sin and shame of America. I will not equivocate. I will not excuse. I will use the severest language I can command, and yet no one word shall escape me that any man whose judgment is not blinded by prejudice, and who is not a heart a slaveholder, shall not confess to be fight and just. But I fancy I hear some of my audience say, it is just in this circumstance that you and your brother abolitionists failed to make a favorable impression on the public mind. Would you argue more and denounce less? Would you persuade more and rebuke less? Your cause would be much more likely to succeed. But I submit, where all is pain, there is nothing to be argued. What point in the anti-slavery creed would you have me argue? On what branch of the subject do the public of this country need light? Must I undertake to prove that the slave is a man? That point is conceded already. Nobody doubts it. The slaveholders themselves acknowledge it in the enactment of laws for the government. They acknowledge it when they punish disobedience on the part of the slave. There are 72 crimes in the state of Virginia which, if committed by a black man, no matter how ignorant he be, subject him to the punishment of death, but only 2 of the same crimes will subject a white man to the like punishment. What is this but the acknowledgement that the slave is a moral, intellectual, and responsible being? The manhood of the slave is conceded. It is admitted in the fact that Southern statute books are covered with enactments forbidding, under severe fines and penalties, the teachings of the slave to read or write. When you can point to any such laws in reference to the beasts of the field, then I may consent to argue the manhood of the slave. When the dogs in your streets, when the fowls of the air, when the cattle of your hills, when the fish of the sea, and the reptiles that crawl shall be unable to distinguish the slave from a brute, there will I argue with you that the slave is a man.